Santa's gotta make it to town. Santa, make him hurry, tell him he can take the freeway down. Run, run, Rudolph, I'm feeling like a merry-go-round. Said Santa.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on. As usual, a little heavy this morning. That was a request from Max, so Merry Christmas, Max, and everyone else, too. That was Lemmy, Run, Run, Rudolph. Today is Monday, December 22nd, 2025, and I was watching Elon Musk, and today's title is inspired by what Elon Musk was saying, is that NGOs are a scam. And I can't remember who else was talking about the big tech companies, but I've got the video in today's show. The big tech companies are using military tech that was given to them for free, and I think it's the same model. I think the NGOs are the model, or maybe the NGOs are modeled off of what they did with tech. But fundamentally, the government realized they couldn't roll it out because either people wouldn't use it, or they wouldn't trust them, or they wouldn't be able to make the money, or they'd have to share it with taxpayers or something like that. There'd be some kind of something that they didn't want to deal with. And so the way to get around all of this was to give it to somebody for free, with the expectation that that person would give access to the military to use it for whatever they wanted to, and they'll get rich. And bingo, bango, bongo, you've got your military tech. You've shopped your trust through this private business. Fundamentally, it looks arm's length, but it's not at all, right? And I think that that model is working on things like Facebook, things like SpaceX, things like Tesla and X, and all sorts of other examples. And I don't think it's an accident. I think those people are made rich, and that's a compensation, right? Yeah. So just some speculation I was thinking about this morning while I was putting the show together. Silver prices are going crazy. Holy cow. I hope your stack is well secured, everyone, right? Oh my gosh. I always thought it'd be cool to have a money bin like Scrooge McDuck, but who knew it would be full of silver. No more restaurants in Canada, and we're watching the implosion of the restaurant economy due to food prices, and it's so just the big guys can really afford it, right? Mom and pop restaurants turning cheap food into generational wealth, is that era is over, unless you're very, very specific niche group, maybe, or something like that. I'm not sure. So that's very, very concerning, because it used to be a good, easy way to get into business, right? Everybody's got to eat, right? And if you're providing food that people like, well, then that's a good thing. People like that. But no longer. And so that's interesting to me. And Substack is pushing back on the Online Harms Act in the United Kingdom, saying protecting kids is one thing, but that's certainly not what we're doing here. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start with Mark Carney. And Mark Carney's talking trade and how Donald Trump really loves the position that Canada's taking with trade with China. And the reason that we're in such a good trade position is because he respects us, or some nonsense. And Mark Nixon says, Mark Carney's insane. Mark Carney just claimed that Donald Trump respects him for deepening trade relations with China. WTF, this may be the most insane thing Carney has ever said, and that says a lot. So here's the back and forth. I'm always impressed with how politicians say some of the most outrageous things, and they say it in such a boring way. Here's Mark Carney with Rosemary Barton.
You seem to get along well with the president. I wonder whether you think that matters, whether that personal relationship that you've developed is helping at all.
I'll refer back to we have the best deal. That's a starting point. I think, look, my view is that the U.S. respects strength. The president respects strength. He respects people. He
sees that in you?
Well, it's for him to answer. He wants to be a great man like me. That's what he said in public. It's kind of it's a good line. I enjoyed it, at least. And so being direct with him and what our objectives are and how we see it, that's important. But also he respects that the UAE wants to invest $70 billion or intends to invest $70 billion in Canada. He respects that we are launched trade negotiations with India, that we're have a rapprochement with China, that we are deepening our defense partnership with Europe, that we are increasing our defense spending, bringing it towards that 5%. Yes, he does respect those steps that we've taken. All of those steps are in Canada's interest. All of those steps are in Canada's interest, but yes, they respect that.
Tightening. So again, this is pretty explosive, Donald Trump respects Canada's rapprochement with China, the tighter trade relationship with China. How can that be? Right? Well, and I mean, Donald Trump himself is trading more with China, but still, I think that the whole intent of having, well, saying he wants Canada as a 51st state is tighter ties in North America and not necessarily less ties around the rest of the world, because everybody does manufacturing in China these days, everybody. And so because you couldn't stand up a factory in Canada, it didn't make any economic sense, right? And you couldn't find people to do it. So depending on what it is, if you want to stand up a food production thing, that's different. But if you're trying to build toys, you do that in other places, right? Electronics, you do that in other places. That's where the chips are. And so it's interesting. I don't necessarily, it's not so cut and dry, but when we don't have a USMCA deal, when we don't have that deal in the bag, and Mark Carney is saying that he's going to play strongman against Donald Trump, I think that it's probably a miscalculation to say Trump respects our close ties to China. Mark Nixon again says, holy cow, Mark Carney is now blaming Trump to justify deepening ties and trade with communist China. At the same time, he wants to marry the EU, importing digital IDs, woke ideology, and Brussels-style control, all because Orange Man bad. This is terrifying for Canada's future. And again, this is from the same interaction. And here's some more explosive stuff. It's a minute 29. It's a lot. He's boring. Yes, they're trying to justify through blaming Trump Canada's pivot away from trade with the United States, but we haven't pivoted away yet, and I don't think people will actually like that. People would get very upset if they couldn't trade with the United States the way they can trade with the United States now. We'll listen to a bit of this. Here we go.
You talked about China there, so that is also part of, I think, your response to what is happening with the United States. As you said, India and China. This past spring, though, you said that China is Canada's biggest security threat. Does that mean that we are taking a risk by aligning ourselves further economically or otherwise because of that? Because it is, in your view, our biggest security threat?
Well, a couple of points here. One is never have all your eggs in one basket. We have too many eggs in the American basket. We would like to maintain that relationship and grow others, but we absolutely need to grow others. And that the S is a capital S at the end of others. So it's India, it's China, yes, it's European Union, it's the UK, it's Thailand, it's Philippines,
right.
It's in Africa and beyond. It's Mercosur, the group of all of which we're working on. First point. The risks, and then the question is, how deep is the relationship, and how clear are the guardrails around that relationship? And there are areas, artificial.
Hopefully better than the fiscal guardrails. When he says we're working on all of that, I've read reports that because of the Russian sanctions, Germany's looking for LNG, Japan's looking to stabilize its LNG because it hasn't been able to stabilize its LNG since the question mark about Russia. And so if we are supposed to be pivoting away from the United States or finding more customers, can we sell things that people want that we have, or we're not allowed to do that, right? I found some LNG in the basement here, Dad. Can we sell this stuff, or no, right now, not right now, I guess, because that contributes to climate change or whatever nonsense. So they say they're working on it. I haven't seen any evidence of that. The only thing I've seen is standing up bureaucracies, and it doesn't work. Like, that's not actually going to get anything built. Mark Nixon again is highlighting the food costs. So let's do our grab bag of governance money edition. And he says, you can't thank the Liberal government for your, or you can thank the Liberal government for your out of control grocery bill. $80 billion deficit spending comes with consequences. So this guy's down in the States and he's comparing food prices down there to food prices up here. And Trump is working hard to reduce the day-to-day costs for Americans, and he's seemingly doing a good job. He's driven the cost of a lot of, and the inflation level is very low in the United States, as far as I understand it, and he's driven costs down due to driving price of inputs down, gasoline prices down, things like that. Anyway, this guy's down in the States. Here we go.
Wow. So this is $10.72 for 4 pounds. In Canada, this is 1.6 kg for $24. You can literally get double the amount of chicken here at Winco versus just less than half for double the price in Canada at Walmart. That is absurd.
That's a big difference, right? Like that's concerning. Big difference, if you ask me. So our money doesn't go as far. If you're in Canada and you're trying to buy beef, don't buy Canadian beef because the Australian beef is much cheaper. Notably cheaper. Dan says, had a Kelowna resident send this to me. The comment, which I'm summarizing into less colorful language, is that imported Australian beef should not be less expensive than Canadian beef. A point I suspect many agree on. I encourage Prime Minister Carney to take grocery prices seriously. And yeah, well, he's not. And that's not surprising. Food Professor says, we expect the number of restaurants in Canada to continue declining in 2026. See the price of beef and the price of chicken that we just talked about. Why are restaurants disappearing? Because in order to make a profit, so people will pay a certain amount of money for food, and at a breaking point, they won't pay that anymore. And so the restaurants are realizing that in order to charge enough for a plate, the customers are not wanting to pay that. And so the restaurant is no longer viable. It's like having a widget that used to cost you $2 to make and get to the store, and now it costs you $5. You can't sell that for $5, but the customers are not willing to pay $10, and that's what you need to price it at, right? And so that's why that's happening, and it's the lowest point since 2019. I'd love to see a longer timeline. I realize we're in 2026, but I remember the early 2000s. I remember 2006. I'd like to compare to 2006 and then 2008 and then 2010, because like some serious things happened during that period of time. If restaurants can survive that, they can survive this. What are the numbers? I don't know. Eva Chipik is talking about this joke, and it's not really a joke because the government does this to us all the time, and we're not allowed to get upset at the government. If we get upset at the government, they say, whoa, that's very hateful of you. That might be Islamophobic or anti-Semitic. Well, I'm not sure. We're going to check out the nationality of the banker you're addressing. But Natalie says, me filing my taxes this year, and it's all redacted. Right? So it's like, yeah, so get out of my business, the government. And Eva says, while this is intended as a joke, I think it raises a legitimate question. Why are private citizens required to account for every penny they earn while governments obscure what our pennies actually go to? Radical transparency is the antidote to corruption. Real accountability is what keeps power in check. In order to have a system that is credible, trustworthy, and worthy of public confidence, we must demand both so that those who are meant to serve the public are actually doing so. Yeah, and they're not, and there's no checks and balances, and they keep us under a microscope, but we are not allowed to understand at all what they're doing. Here's an Elon Musk talking about the NGOs, and I think that it is extrapolated into technology, and they shop the technology through private companies, and the private companies get to be rich, and they get all sorts of military backing and all sorts of preferential treatment from the government, so long as the government gets a dashboard and they can control anybody they want, right? Here's Elon Musk talking about NGOs.
There was a case where we saw one person was getting $1.9 billion sent to their NGO, which basically got formed about a year ago and had no prior, no prior activity. The whole NGO thing is a nightmare, and it's a misnomer, because if you have a government-funded non-governmental organization, you're simply a government-funded organization. It's an oxymoron.
Right. It's a loophole.
Yes. It basically, the government-funded NGOs are a way to do things that would be illegal if they were the government, but are somehow made legal if it's sent to a so-called nonprofit. But these nonprofits are then used to, people cash out these nonprofits. They become very wealthy through nonprofits. They pay themselves enormous sums through these nonprofits.
It's so insane that that's been going on for so long.
It's a gigantic scam, like one of the biggest, maybe the biggest scam ever.
And how many NGOs?
I think there's a total number of NGOs, probably millions, but in terms of large NGOs, tens of thousands.
Yeah. So that's pretty crazy, right? Like, it's a lot of NGOs. This I have not watched yet. I was intending to watch it before I played the show today, or before I did the show, but then I finished putting together the show and I forgot. So apologies about that. But Catherine Austin Fitts is talking about conflict or a court case in the Netherlands. I'll just read this. It covers it a little bit. Catherine Fitts provides bombshell testimony to a court in the Netherlands, who have agreed to hear what may be one of the largest and most important landmark legal cases in recent history. The lawsuit alleges crimes perpetrated worldwide by prominent global figures. As with Carl D. Harrison and I's landmark vaccine travel mandates lawsuit, mainstream media are not covering this, so be sure to repost and share this information widely. Attorney Peter Stazen has filed a lawsuit alleging that prominent global figures tied to pandemic-era policy and pharmaceutical decision-making committed crimes against humanity. According to court filings, the lawsuit targets what Strassen describes as the architects of the Great Reset, naming Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, and Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla as defendants. The case asserts that the decisions surrounding COVID-19 policy, pharmaceutical deployment, and global coordination resulted in widespread harm. As part of the legal record, Stassen has entered testimony from multiple experts and researchers, including Sasha L., Catherine Austin Fitz, Dr. Joseph Sandstone, Dr. Michael Yeadon, and legal analyst Catherine Watt. According to the lawsuit, the testimony presented outlines allegations of systemic misconduct, including the suppression of dissenting scientific views, coercive vaccination strategies, and the alleged concealment of long-term health risks. Yeah, so it's a pretty big deal. And so will something move forward with this? I think Rainier Fulmark is still in jail for opposing this in Germany. So will there be anything that comes out of this? I genuinely have no idea. But at least people are trying. There's something there. In 1BC update news, Dallas Brody has regained the control of the party, but I think it's of no effect. I think it doesn't matter, right? Like the party's done. I don't think that it's going to be resurrected because of what happened. So people are not on board with Dallas Brody's position on remigration, and I think that's going to split the party support to the point where it's going to make the party moot, basically. Dallas Brody says, as you may be aware, 1BC has gone through a difficult 10 days where control over the party was being contested. After negotiations, I've regained control of the party and have reassumed my position as leader of 1BC effective immediately. I'm terribly sorry for this conflict that spilled out into the open. It was not what I wanted or ever dreamed could happen. That being said, I have a great and bright vision for the future of British Columbia and this 1BC movement, which will put BC back in the hands of its citizens rather than its elected officials. We know how badly we have all been let down by the establishment, and we plan to fight with everything we have so that BC can thrive again. We have an amazing province with resources beyond the wildest imagination. We can have abundance and opportunity for everyone again. Do not lose hope. Do not get discouraged. Do not give up. Stay courageous and be ready to go into full expansion mode in 2026. We will need every single one of you. Merry Christmas, and may God bless you and your family at this most beautiful time of the year. And so that's her thing. And 1BC says, good news, Dallas has reclaimed the party and we are back to work. Merry Christmas, everyone. And again, too late. We've seen it all, right? We've seen everything. So that's from Extras, Captain Picard. Danielle Tyree, who's one of the founders of the Dominion Society, says Dallas has been back in control of 1BC for less than 24 hours, and the party's immigration policy has been completely scrubbed from their website. So previously, this is what it said. Immigration, raise wages for BC workers by taking control over immigration, just as Quebec does. Take greater control over immigration policy to end mass immigration into BC and promote cultural integration. End the importation of foreign grievances and the flow of fentanyl from the Chinese Communist Party. So that's all gone. So according to Daniel. So again, I think that it's unfortunate what happened, but when people tell you who they are, you should believe them. Here's Table Salt, and they're highlighting Danielle Smith on remigration and on immigration. And Smith, it's 32 seconds. Oops. Sorry. I pushed a button and I didn't mean for it to go. Here is Danielle Smith.
You should come to Alberta because you have a job. You should be a taxpayer first. And then if you want to stay and become a permanent resident, that's when you can bring in your wife and your kids and you can start on the pathway to permanent citizenship. We believe that those who are not here in a permanent status should be treated like tourists. And as a tourist, you don't go to somebody else's country and say, pay for my child care, pay for my education, pay for my health care, pay for my long-term care, give me a pension. We have to get back to something approaching a consensus around immigration again. And so that's what we're going to be looking to Albertans to see if they want to give us a mandate to do that.
So I wish that politicians would enforce the law as written. Oh, we're going to go and ask Albertans if we should do this. Well, if you don't have permanent status, you should be treated like a tourist. Yes, I agree with that. But the pathway to permanency, et cetera, sure. But I fear it's going to be applied to people who are already here and who have already broken rules, laws, et cetera. And that's concerning to me, right? Like, I don't want that. Here is somebody's doing the Tucker Carlson thing. Like, this is not what people want. I agree. Jeffrey Rath is talking about, there's a lot of people who are interested in the Alberta independence situation. And I feel Jeffrey Rath is being attacked. People are saying that he's not the right representative. He's too gruff. He's too mean to people and things like that. And so it seems like there's a coordinated attack going on against Jeffrey Rath. Anyway, he says, I just had an hour-long discussion with Real Cam Davies about how unhappy we all are about the rumors that Danielle Smith is planning a spring election and doing everything she can to subvert a standalone vote on Alberta independence. It has been clear to me for some time that Danielle Smith's chief of staff is the factum of Murray Edwards and other Alberta billionaires like Michael Binion, Ron Mannix, Nancy Southern, Sam Marici, and that Rob Anderson is working to further their federalist interests instead of the interests of Albertans who don't own homes in Panama, Dubai, Argentina, England, Italy, and other hotspots of the rich, famous, and tax-sheltered. Just look into the recent coal company settlements and which lawyer got paid. I'll give you a hint. He's one of Rob Anderson's best friends. Albertans will need to decide whether they want to keep supporting Carney-style cronyism or whether Albertans and their families shouldn't enjoy the same level of freedom from taxation enjoyed by Rob and Danielle's billionaire friends. Please read The Value of Freedom at Alberta Prosperity Project and understand that Alberta independence means freedom from federal income tax on day one after independence. And so Keith doesn't like it. He says, is the Alberta Prosperity Project now aligned with the Alberta Republican Party because of Cam Davies? And so Jeffrey Rath responds, and so it's a little bit of back and forth here. Fundamentally as well, I don't know if Keith is a part of the attack against Jeffrey Rath. Jeffrey says, calm down. Somebody says, hey, you guys, stop fighting. You're on the same side. He says, calm down. It's just a discussion. It's fine. Like, no problems, guys. But it's quite interesting to see the fiery rhetoric being fired back and forth between these guys. So it's interesting. 22 minutes. I got to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. If not, that's okay. I'll be around tomorrow. And for everybody else, we will carry on as soon as I end the stream here. And low numbers of viewers this morning. I think everybody's in Christmas week mode, and they're heading into not many people at work, or they're getting last minute Christmas gifts and things like that, I think. Here's free speech, and we got to talk about free speech.